And good morning, Rachel Nichols.
Morning, Mr. Bayless.
You know what's going to happen to me, and by the first break, I'll have 5 texts from 5 of my friends saying, "Oh, it's so great having Rachel on. She's so smart on the NBA." And I always say, no, she knows the NFL, she knows the MLB, and we'll find out a little later in the show.
Thank you. That means the checks I'm paying your friends are clearing, which I appreciate.
Correct. Thank you very much. Okay, so speaking of the NBA, let's talk NBA as it's about to translate into another language for Team USA, into international basketball language. New rules, new dimensions, new philosophies, new chemistry and grit and know-how among opponents, such as Joker Serbia, which will play our Olympic team in a practice game right here on FS1 following Undisputed at noon Eastern. Okay, so Rachel, Paul Pierce and Keyshawn believe this entire Olympic tournament will be one big mismatch for Team USA. That on just talent alone, depth of talent alone, our guys will wipe out, blow out every team they play from here on. Do you agree?
I don't agree. I mean, the U.S. just waltzing its way to a gold medal, those days are over. We used to win by 40 points, right? I think big, huge wins now are 15 points. You have to remember that not only has the rest of the world caught up in general with international basketball, but the rise of the three-pointer means that there is a guy on every one of the top 4 or 5 teams who could get hot, start hitting a bunch of threes, and we know that can sometimes be the ball game, which in a single elimination tournament, which this will get to be from the quarterfinals on, that matters. All that being said, the U.S. should win the gold. I've been saying that all spring here and all summer, is that this is the best team by far, head and shoulders. I don't think they're going to cakewalk, but I do think that if you see the exhibition games and the way things have played out, even the worrying stuff is stuff that they can attack. So worrying so far has been that Joel Embiid has not looked as good as we thought he would. He is obviously playing his way back into shape. But guess what? Anthony Davis has looked great. Bam Adebayo has looked great. So they clearly have that size. They have the presence in the middle. They're still working it out because, Key, you saw those like backdoor cuts that Australia was doing and some of the bullying they were doing under the basket.
Bullying? We got bullied.
There's a little bullying under the basket, right, from Australia. But again, I see the U.S. working those out. Steve Kerr hasn't even begun to set his rotations yet. Kevin Durant, who is just an automatic scoring machine in international basketball, he hasn't played yet. So I'm not concerned in the slightest. I just don't think it's a cakewalk. They're going to have to play basketball. They should still win, but they're going to have to actually play the games.
Well, you start off right, Rachel, by saying you don't agree, which is fine. But then by the time you got to the end, you done completely shifted my thought process, because in the beginning, you're like, it might not be by 50. Okay, but if you win every single game, you get to the gold. That's the goal. Winning the gold medal is the goal, which means along the way, you're probably going to wipe out everybody. It may not be by 50 every single game. Even the Dream Team didn't win by 50 every single game.
The question was, are they going to blow out the team?
Oh, my God,
that is what is being attributed to.
And on top of that, you also stop short of mentioning other names, right? You talked about AD and Bam. And then you could go on and 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 on. That's the issue, is the on and on that we have that the other teams don't have. Like Paul said the other day, he could just close his eyes and point and pick out 5. I don't want, what you want to do? You want to put the 3 bigs on the court? And we want to do who? You want Halliburton and Drew Holiday out there with? Like, we don't know the rotation.
So are you willing to say it's going to be all blowouts from here? Because
What do you consider a blowout? I consider a blowout whatever. I consider a blowout whatever the spread is plus something.
Okay.
That's what I consider a blowout.
Like today, we're 15.5 over Serbia, but you want 20,
So give me 20.
Yeah,
So I add the 15 plus another 5, that's 20 to me. That's a blowout.
I'll buy that.
And when you think about the depth of it, you mentioned there's no KD, which is true. Like, if KD steps on the court, what do you think's going to happen? He's the top scorer in international basketball in the Olympics. He holds the record. So how do you sit back and you look at our situation and our depth and think that those other teams have caught up to us because their international basketball has caught up to the U.S. With individual players? We're not talking about taking, I don't know how many damn countries but in the Olympics, but we're not talking about taking all the top players and putting them on one team against all the top players in the U.S. and putting them on one team. Okay?
That would be a different story.
That's a different conversation now. Now we're talking about Serbia playing U.S. They got Joker and Bogdanovic. And who else?
Yeah, I mean, look, again.
Joker's not enough. As much as we love him in Denver, and he's the Joker, and he's the MVP, and he won a championship, and all, he's not enough.
Keyshawn, at one point, Australia was leading in the fourth quarter, okay? I get it. It's not a blowout.
Yeah, but
It's
Rachel,
not a
in the
blowout.
third quarter, they was getting ready to go up by 30.
It's not a blowout.
They had them by 24.
They play all four
and
quarters
then
of
all of a
basketball.
sudden, they
All of
took
them.
their foot off the gas,
It's not a
had a
blowout.
few turnovers here and there, and they just... but I'm not going to panic, though.
No, who's panicking?
There ain't no panic. They won by 6. It's in a meaningless game. They win by 6 points.
Okay, to Rachel's first point, I do believe this. I do believe the rest of the world has caught up with us, which is why the first 2 players off the board in this draft we just watched were from France. And all of a sudden, it's this, and it's this, and it's this. And you just say that half the first round is not from the U.S. of A. And having covered several Olympic runs, and you've been there, and I've been there, and watching this closely, this basketball is way different than, quote unquote, our basketball. It's a weird form. It's like a hybrid form where the court's a little shorter, the three-point line's a little shorter. The games are definitely, where they're 8 minutes shorter. So a lot can go wrong quickly where you get in trouble and you only get 5 fouls. So it's more like March Madness, in which I watch March Madness and just like slap my forehead because the star always gets 3 fouls and then he's in trouble and he can't even play until the end of the game. And this happens here because we're going to get into a one-and-done situation against some very dangerous teams.
Yeah, we got 15 stars, not 1.
And,
I think the roster's 15.
I agree with that. That's the good news and the bad news because, Keyshawn, only 5 can play at once. And I was actually, in a weird way, relieved for Team USA when Kawhi couldn't go because it actually shortened the depth a little bit where Steve Kerr isn't on such a hot seat because if Kawhi has to start because he's got 2 rings and he's finals MVP twice finals MVPs.
Literally everybody on the team feels like a finals MVP.
Well, I know, but Steve Kerr's got to kind of honor Kawhi's legacy, and so he's got to play him pretty high minutes and probably make him a starter, and all of a sudden it just clarifies. It just opens up the roster a little bit in a good way to where you have too much of a good thing. You have all these players who can do all these things, but only 5 can play, and very quickly you have to find a chemistry that these other squads already have, because these other squads have literally grown up together in many cases, like the Australia squad. They just all, they love each other and they play hard for their country, so they ain't quitting. And the main thing about all these teams is they ain't afraid of no Americans. They are, because they play in the NBA and they play at a high level. All right, so you said, who else does Serbia have? I don't know if you watched Miami much down the stretch. I'm sure you did. But this Jovic started playing more and more for Miami. And every time I watched him, I'd say, this kid can really play. So I just checked. He had 3 20-plus point games in February, March for the Miami Heat. Well, okay, trust me, he's pretty good. My point is, they all know each other, and then they got a bunch of Euro players who've been with them forever. They all grew up together. And these things, even more than our games, become three-point shooting contests, as you point out, to where these teams, as you get deeper and deeper into the Olympic tournament, it's beyond the Boston Celtics shooting threes. They're going to jack them like crazy. And if you catch in a one-and-done situation, one team with hot hands, a couple hot hands, you can just get in trouble. Then if AD gets in foul trouble or whoever, names, if any of our bigs get in foul trouble, we get in some trouble. We're up against it in ways you're not in an NBA game. It's just a different flavor of basketball. And at some points, it can drive our guys crazy because it ain't right. Like, this isn't how you're supposed to play this game, right? Okay, so that's my only point.
You do realize by the time they tip off on the 28th, they will have participated together a month to get used to all the little short this and this and they will have.
Well, I know.
Okay, so
23 days, but yeah.
I call it a month.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah, 23 days. That's a lot of time to get adjusted to what's going on the court. And the rules aren't so different that they can't get adjusted. Okay, you mentioned the three-point shot is a little closer. Okay, they make those adjustments along the way.
It just weirdly, it disrupts your psyche a little bit.
In the beginning,
Because
yeah.
Steph went 1 for 6 the other day, and I'm like, Steph,
in the beginning, yes, that it will disrupt them. But over time, they get used to all of these things.
Yeah.
And you say, well, what if one of our bigs get in trouble? Okay, well, one or two, maybe two of them get in trouble. Okay, you know, there's such thing as going a little smaller and being able to run up and down the court.
And they'd probably be just as good that way.
That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying this is Michael's dream team, one team, and all that. I'm not getting into that. But this is the closest thing. This is literally the closest thing, too.
Yeah.
But they're not playing dream team opponents. That's the thing to remember. Will they win the gold medal? They absolutely should. And I have said multiple times, it will be embarrassing if they don't. Will they blow teams out? No, I don't think as we get to the very last couple games, they will.
Well, I don't know who's going to be the very last couple games.
Well,
because they undefeated right now in the preseason.
They played 2 games.
I know, they're undefeated, though. They hadn't lost.
No, 100%.
Canada's lost, and Serbia's lost.
I don't expect them to lose.
Australia's lost, and Serbia's getting ready to drop one at noon Eastern on FS1. So they will be 3-0.
By what, 30?
I got them by 20. I told you I'm going to give them, if the spread is 15, I'll give them another 5.
Here's how I know that even the people who are the architects of that team expect this to be close. They don't expect blowouts at every game, especially toward the end. Grant Hill called me from Abu Dhabi the other day to talk to me about the Jaylen Brown, Derek White situation.
Wow.
And he made the point that the little things Derek White does that are a little bit different in his role on the team and the fact that they could bring in someone who is a guard instead of a forward because of the way the rotation was shaping out. He made such micro points that it said to me they think the micro points are going to be the difference in whether they win or not. That's how close they think it's going to be. That doesn't mean that he doesn't think they're going to win. I think they have every confidence. But this idea that they're going to blow out every team.
I didn't say blowout. I said 15 and give me 5, and I consider that a blowout. Whatever the point spread is, add 5.